of firepower near Kharkov. Many more vehicles are coming as the war in Ukraine enters a new pace. For weeks, the Ukrainian 46th Air Mobile Brigade has been bracing for a powerful Russian attack on its positions in Kharkov, in the southern part of eastern Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast. On Tuesday, that attack finally came in the form of at least 14 Russian armored vehicles, many of them laden with infantry. The attack was one of the opening salvos of a long-anticipated effort by the Russians to roll up Ukrainian defenses around the fortress city of Pokrovsk and nearby Mirnored, 25 miles north of Kharkov. If Pokrovsk falls, the whole Ukrainian line in Donetsk Oblast could collapse. So what happened next outside Kharkov is good news for Ukraine, but potentially fleeting. The 46th Air Mobile Brigade smashed that initial Russian assault. More assaults are certainly coming, however. The column of Russian vehicles rolled toward Kharkov along one of the main east-west roads threading from Russian-occupied Donetsk city. Several miles east of Kharkov, they ran into a wall of Ukrainian mines, cluster artillery, explosive first-person view drones, and anti-tank missiles. The Russian column ground to a fiery halt. Ukrainian drones dropped grenades on Russian troops fleeing the wreckage. The Russians consistently suffer horrific casualties while assaulting Ukrainian defenses and yet keep coming. Despite losing more than 1,000 troops who are killed or wounded every day, on average, the Russian military is still recruiting enough fresh troops to make good its losses. It helps that North Korea has sent thousands of its own soldiers to help. The Russians' defeat outside Kharkov on Tuesday belies their overall progress in the east and especially in Donetsk. The threat of the collapse of the entire southern front in the Donetsk region now this is already a reality, Ukrainian journalist Stanislav Aziev warned. The best outcome for the Ukrainians is that Kharkov holds, slowing the Russians and preserving the defensive zone that protects Pokrovsk from encirclement. The worst outcome is that Kharkov falls and the Russians move to besiege Pokrovsk in the weeks before President-elect Donald Trump is inaugurated in the United States. As the proverbial storm gathers over Kharkov, there's a thin silver lining for the Ukrainians. According to the Ukrainian Center for Defense Strategies, the Russians' focus on the axis between Kharkov and Pokrovsk means they're losing momentum and decreasing activity on all other fronts. All that really means, however, is that the Kremlin has decided that the Kharkov-Pokrovsk axis is the strategic axis in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the 10th Mountain Brigade was ready and waiting when 4 Russian battalions attacked, each with potentially dozens of vehicles. Normally, a Russian commander would order his supporting artillery to bombard a Ukrainian position ahead of an attack in order to suppress the defenders. For some reason, the 123rd Motor Rifle Brigade's commander did no such thing. An unprepared attack without accompanying support was doomed to fail, the blogger wrote. Sure enough, the Ukrainians blasted the approaching Russian BIMP fighting vehicles and up-armored turtle tanks with Stogna P anti-tank missiles and explosive drones, leaving at least 8 vehicles wrecked or abandoned along the main road threading from Bilohorivka to Vyemka. Those 8 struck vehicles are just the ones the 10th Mountain Brigade caught on camera. There may be many more Russian losses. We suffered heavy losses in tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, the blogger complained, with many soldiers killed and even more wounded. 5 days later, the wounded survivors of the failed assault were reportedly still lying in a nearby treeline, awaiting evacuation that showed no sign of coming. It's the 3rd year of the special operation, yet commanders continue to lie and make mistakes, disregarding the lives of their soldiers, the blogger wrote. A year after launching a powerful counteroffensive all along the 800-mile front line of the wider war, Russian forces are advancing along several key axes. But Russian gains along the axis between Bilohorivka and Vyemka have been minimal, a couple of miles at most. If the recent Russian assault is any indication, poor leadership might be the main reason the Russians are underperforming in this sector. And there are few prospects for positive changes in the command structure of the 123rd Motor Rifle Brigade. The unit's commanders are not afraid of punishment,